Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lit Up Lightworker Podcast, bringing you fun and soulful interviews with spiritual teachers with the aim of tuning you in and lighting you up. You can access all episodes of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos and interviews all about finding and following your life purpose. My name is George Lizos. I'm a spiritual teacher, intuitive, the author of Be the Guru, Protect Your Light, and the #1 best-selling Lightworkers Gotta Work. And today I have with me Rich Lister. Rich Lister is a holistic coach who specializes in self-regulation, reconnection, resourcing, and rest. His roots are in the Norse tradition, and he's been using and working with the runes for 20 plus years. Rich, welcome to the Lit Up Lightworker Podcast.
Absolute honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you here to talk about your new book with Hay House, Runes Made Easy. And I gotta tell you, I've always found the runes fascinating. I've loved the Norse religion and tradition and mythology. I've obsessed over Vikings, the TV series, but I've never actually studied this. So I'm so excited to learn all about the runes and the Norse tradition in general. And I'm sure many of my guests are interested in this as well. So before we get started and talk about the runes, I want to hear about your own journey in learning and connecting with the runes. What was it that got you to where you are today?
Well, I love stories, and since I was relatively young, I enjoyed stories and how the mythology of things evolved. And then, like in the early 2000s, I went to a pagan camp, may have had a mead or six, and I remember looking at the fire, and this guy comes out of the fire with one eye and a raven and a spear, and he told me I had to go and do a load of things. And like when a one-eyed god tells you to go and do something, you go and do those things. And in Norse mythology, the one-eyed god is Woden, the god of kings, and he's very authoritarian. So I went and did those things, and here I am now. And one of those things was learning all about the runes in as much detail as I could, because they're a modality that I really enjoy, and they work really well, being brought from the really dead and buried past, from like the 13th century all the way back, resurrected back into the now.
What I love about pagan traditions in general is that they're resurfacing right now. Essentially, the gods of all the different cultures around the world have never really died. The religions have changed, the traditions have changed, but the gods still exist, and they're resurfacing. Our interest and our work with them and earth-based spirituality is resurfacing, which I find so touching and I'm so happy with, because I'm also pagan myself. So of course the runes are connected with the Nordic tradition. They are like so interconnected. So I guess to understand the runes, we have to understand the Nordic tradition. And in your book, Runes Made Easy, you talk about the Nordic tradition. So I was wondering whether you can give us an introduction as to what was the perspective of the Nordic people about the gods, about the universe, about life, and how do runes come into this?
So the Vikings, the Norse, whatever word you want to use. I use Nordic in my book, but whatever works for you. Vikings like leather and chainmail and stuff. Who wouldn't? They viewed the world as an interconnected web of layers. In a lot of the Hellenic traditions, you have the witches who sit round and they pass the eye around and they peer into the future. In the Norse, the Viking spirituality, they have the Norns who sit at the root of the world tree, this massive ash called Yggdrasil, and they spin the fates of everyone together like a rug that links together with threads. And these threads say, right now, your thread and my thread are interacting because they're close together. But because we're close together, everyone near you is being pulled ever so slightly near me. That's also happening in like 4, 5, 6, 7 dimensions across like time and space and the energies and stuff. So all of this web of the weird, WYRD weird, is all interacting together, that's being spun by these Norns, these 3 goddesses. And the runes work by being attached to the different vibrational energies that come across the weird. So if, for instance, you are vibrating with a high abundance energy, Theyu, the rune of the cattle, of abundance, of resources and money might be the rune that comes to you. If you're feeling full of brute force and power, it's Uraz, the Uruks, the strength rune. And these concepts are very primitive because, as we all know, when Christianity moved north, they literally burned everyone who had the old ways and the old beliefs. So all the this stuff was written down by Christian monks with their spin on it. So a lot of the language is very Christianized. So we have to work out how people thought about things 1500 years ago. So we find out what the runes mean and then reinterpret them from now. We don't have an Uruks anymore, this strong, big bull type creature, but we do have a JCB, a digger, or a crane. Cow isn't necessarily the best unit of currency anymore, but we do have dollars and euros. Ice is a very different concept now because we have control over it. We have fridges and freezers, but being able to skate and move across things is a different idea. So all these different concepts that we had 1500 years ago are moving their way in, as you just said, with this revitalizing of the ancient, to be reinterpreted, re-understood by modern humans in ways that can bring themselves into the energies of now, so we can understand how the concept of family affects us now via modern mediums like Zoom, opposed to a family unit living in a borough in deep, dark, frozen Norway, looking after each other, where now we have to look after each other as we light up, as we work the light together to bring that energy in.
I love that you talked about the weird, because I've had a book that I've read by Brian Bates called The Way of Weird, and I've read that years ago. And in one of my decluttering moments, I've discarded it. But I remember I had given it to my dad to see. I had given the bulk of discarded books to my dad to see if he wanted something. And for some reason, he saved that book. And my dad passed away since then, and I was decluttering his stuff. And I found that book buried in his among his books a few days ago. And now I'm having this conversation with you about that. So I saved it, the book. I didn't throw it away. I'm like, wait, you know what? Something calls to me again back to that book. So it's interesting how these threads, right, that you just talked about.
Yeah. Yes. Spreads up and down.
I love it. And I love that you talked about the fates. And I want to talk a little bit about fate versus determinism. Is the future written in stone by the fates, or is it can we change it and can we affect it? Because runes are a divination tool. And from the Greek pagan tradition, you have the three goddesses, the three fates, Lachesis, Clotho, and Atropos. One, the Lachesis, sets the main events that are going to happen in someone's life, but does not determine whether they're going to happen or not, because we have the free will of just changing them and completing them or choosing them or not. Then you have Clotho, which just weaves everything together and makes everything happen. And then Atropos, that takes the life of the person at the end of their life. So how does the Nordic tradition consider fate, and to what degree is fate written in stone?
That's a really good question. Thank you. A lot of the Nordic traditions, fate versus destiny versus free will stuff, has been lost because it didn't fit with the Christian ideal of the God's will. But what we do know is that in the poems and stories, that people didn't get fated to do X, Y, and Z. You had control. And there's a really good line in a movie called The 13th Warrior that was pulled from a really old text in Iceland that said, "Run and hide, if you will. The thread of your life has been written long ago, and you'll live 50 years anyway, but you can hide under a rock and be a coward, or you can just go and have fun and do exciting things, and you'll die from whatever reason. You're still going to die after this amount of time. So why live your life in fear?" So I think the fate, the predetermination aspect isn't necessarily as fixed as maybe we perceive in modern Western parlance. We have the fate is very self-deterministic, as you said, with the Hellenic stuff, with the Greek stuff, is that you can choose whether to engage with the battle, you can choose whether to go to the job, you can choose this, but you do have to pay the consequences of what happens. if I choose not to fight and the clan sees me as weak and horrible and throws me out, that's my fault because I chose that. If I choose to go and fight and get killed, I chose that. So it's all about choice, but those choices have ripples. Like if you throw a stone in a pond, the lilies will bounce up and down because of that stone. And with those ripples spread influence. And if you have a strong energy like Zeus, like Odin, they can pluck those ripples and move them themselves. Whereas you and I, mere mortals on this realm, living our energetic experience in these bodies, have a different energy around it. We can affect those energies around us almost immediately around us, like you and I are affecting right now. My wife downstairs, maybe the neighbours, if they're loud, I can shout at them, or whatever. Those things we can affect. But the gods, these powerful entities that stalk the universe, who want to do their amazing things themselves, go, I like George, I'm going to go and put $10,000 in his way and flick that string of fate so you go towards that potential money. So it's about seizing the opportunity, seizing the chance that the universe presents you, opposed to just waiting because, it will come to me, I'm doing the right thing, I'm being a good person. It's an action-based process opposed to an inaction-based process, if that makes sense. It's very down to the Nordic mentality.
Yes, I love how nuanced it is rather than black and white, because as you said, we usually tend to have a very black and white opinion about fate, but it's not like that. There's so many different layers involved. And of course, here come the runes, which are a divination tool, right? So talk to us a little bit, what are the runes and how do they come to be? I know they're a divination tool, I know you cast them, but that's as far as my knowledge goes.
So the runes have got their history back in petroglyphs, like carvings in stone, which are thousands of years old, and they evolve as humans evolve. So primarily they're a language, they're a way of writing down sounds like hieroglyphs or the alphabet as we know it in English or any other language. And these runes have evolved through that language to mean concepts. Each rune has a poem associated with it. The Anglo-Saxon runes are quite evolved poems because they're written down by monks who are really interested in converting the heathen pagans. And these runes are quite complete, and we have rune poems that are really full of meaning, and that my translation of those are in my Runes Made Easy book. There are also the Norse, Norwegian rune poems that are brutal. They talk about things, pustules and death and bears eating you and stuff like that. And even more brutal are the Icelandic ones, because in the 10th century, Iceland was being settled, and it was like the Wild West, like we see in Western movies in America, except with battle axes and swords, with grudges and lawless people migrating to this new place. So the culture defines the runes as a language, and then defines the meaning of the runes. And these runes then pick on this resonance, this shape of energy that we associate with them. So like I said, Feyu, the rune of abundance, of wealth, of cattle, looks like a cow. It's just got a straight staff with two little horns coming out. So cows have their horns, and that's the runes look like that. Uraz, the rune of strength, looks like, if you defocus and get primitive, a rune of a big mighty ox with big shoulders pointing forwards and a smaller back. Each rune has a different shape that is carved into the rock, carved into the bone, carved into the steel, and they either used as a letter, a sound, a phonetic noise, or as a concept to bring that energy in. And as we evolve that energy, we bring it into our modern versions, and realizing that we can use it to divine by casting rune sticks. And there's a Volva, a witch, who was found in Jutland in Denmark, who had brass, if I remember rightly, runes in her grave with a spinning distaff, which is a way of turning wool into thread. And because a Volva means wand weaver, so she wove the thread literally and wove the threads of fate as well, and then use the runes to divine the future by looking at almost the same ways we do nowadays tarot cards, maybe looking at the past, the present, the future, or energies that are affecting the status quo, so we can see where we can have the most powerful actions.
Wow. So essentially runes have different interpretations based on the people who use them.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the interpretation that you're using in the book?
So I'm using Elder Futhark, which is Futhark is like the same way we'd say alphabet, for so alpha beta type thing, is the elder one, which is older, which is probably first came into use maybe 500 AD, so 500 in the current era, when Rome was starting to fall, when the Germanic tribes were starting to reach power, the Alans and things like that were crushing Constantinople and the new Roman Empire and things like that. So these runes were formed in a time of strife and change. And I've used the Elder Futhark and I've used the Anglo-Saxon rune poems to describe them, because the rune poems are very fulfilled and very easy to access, and Old English is easier to translate for an English speaker than Old Norse. And these runes, I think, work really well because there's 24 of them with 24 concepts that group together in 4 groups of 8 called ets, or families, that describe, almost like tarot, with the fool's journey through enlightenment. You start off with the first et, which is about how you find yourself. You have your resources, your strength, your bliss, your how you interact with other people. Then there's strife with Helaglas, which is the hail that destroys everything. And then you move on to the last et, where you talk about enlightenment. You step through the portal of initiation with Degaz, or you use Ingwaz, the heroic rune, to find your seed of influence and power within yourself. And yes, it's sort of like a hero's journey of power through the runes as you move through them.
I love it. So essentially, since they haven't started as a divination tool, they've started as these letters, essentially, a way of communication, and they have like so much history and meaning behind them. Can we use them beyond just as divination tools? What are some of the ways, the alternative ways, we can use the runes for?
So runes are great because they're versatile. The Nordic peoples back in the day loved versatility. If you're stuck on a boat in the middle of the North Sea, you need to make sure everything works. And runes work not just to be able to write your name, they not just to predict the weather, or if the monastery you're about to raid is going to be full of monks and treasure, but it also works to heal, to cast spells that, like, for success in battle, or lovemaking, or healing, or curing someone, or poisoning someone, or all these malefacts as well. And by building a runic spell, you use the concepts you want with intent, either scored onto stone, or you can burn it onto wood with a pyrography tool. I use lollipop sticks because they're a really handy way of doing it, to write individual runes as a word that you'd make up to do your spell. Or you can use a bind rune, and a bind rune is where you overlay different runes on top of each other to make a pattern that brings the energy of each of those runes in as a almost like a veve that the hoodoo and the voodoo people use in Haiti, to bring that energy in as a pattern to manifest the intent that you have for it. And there's a story in Eagle Saga of Eagle, who's this rune master who used his power to stop someone getting sick, because the healer who tried to stop them getting sick used the wrong runes and was poisoning them by accident. So he had to get the old stick out, burn the old stick, and then start again. So making sure the runes are really done with the right intent and the right knowledge of the runes builds a really powerful energetic resonance that pulls threads from different dimensions, different times, different people, and different universes to help you perform what you wanted to do.
I love that. And of course, in the book, you have some spells I've seen which that people can try. So essentially, they're like, in the same way we use crystals to bring different qualities and creating something, you can use runes in a similar way. So how about, because I know you can carve the runes on different materials, in different materials. For example, I've seen crystal runes, I've seen wooden ones, you've talked about brass ones. So how does the material influence the reading or the way we use the runes?
We know that the Vikings used whalebone, they used brass, they used steel, they used stone, like pebbles from the beach, to make their own runes, and wood. I believe the people at the time used the runes as a, or whatever they carved them on, as an expedient method of what they want to use it for. I have stones handy, I'll use stones. I want something that will last a long time, I'll use metal. We've got a whalebone over here, so we'll use that. Now we have a much more nuanced view of the world. We've had 1,500 years more evolution in our spiritual practice and in our human psyche and all this sort of stuff. So if you wanted your rune set to be a rune set that promoted love and peace and joy, perhaps using rose quartz in your runes would work. Using tumble stones and a Sharpie, which you can use a carver thing, but I'm not going to promote that. You cut your fingers off. Or obsidian if you want to reflect those energies back. I'm not a big crystal person, so they're about the two that I know off the top of my head. So depending on the intent of your runes, you can use the crystal. If you want your runes to have the energy of the wood, the tree that goes with it, my runes here are done on ash, and these ash runes are from an old spear I used to have when I was doing Viking reenactments, and it broke, so I cut the spear up to make my rune discs. I also have one that's made of yew wood, and yew in Viking mythology is a tree for traveling between dimensions. If you sit under a yew in hot weather and take some deep breaths and meditate, the tree releases a chemical that's a little bit psychoactive, and it helps you step between dimensions. So your meditations can be really powerful, which is why yew trees tend to be seen as sacred, especially in the north. And they were found in churchyards now, because churches were built on sacred areas, so they put yew trees in there. So we can see that the material used to make the runes is a lot to do with the intent. Out of expedience, you can grab whatever you've got to hand. And in my book, I talk about doing it on post-it notes or on lollipop sticks, because they're things you might have to hand. If you're making one for a bit more use, I use my rune discs every day, and they're on bits of ash that will last probably 30 or 40 years before they wear out. But it's up to you what you want, because they're yours, and if it's built with your energy, with your power, then your runes will resonate back with you even stronger. But also, Vikings are really into blood sacrifice, so don't be surprised if you cut yourself when you're making your runes, because that happens, and that really anchors in your energy into the power.
Yes, it's always great to give part of your energy into the tool you're using to connect. Now, so let's say we have the runes right now, we've created them, or we've bought them, or we've been gifted. How do we cast them? What is the a step-by-step process? Of course, you explain it in more detail in the book, but just give us an idea as to how the process is done.
So let's do one now. Do you have a question for the runes, George?
Yes, why not? Actually, let's do a collective question for everybody listening. For everybody listening, what should they know that will help them move forward with their life purpose? Since this is the purpose of the podcast, to help people follow their purpose.
So I invite you listening now to place your hand on your heart, take a breath, tune in with your question, like what is your life purpose? What is the next step to take? And I'm going to reach into my rune bag, and I'm going to draw a rune for the previous influences, what's gone on before now. And that's Feu. This is the rune of the cattle, the abundance, the money. And so this is a energy that's been bouncing around in your aura in the recent past, literally maybe 5 minutes ago, maybe a day ago, not long ago at all. So this energy has been affecting what's going on in the world with you right now. It could be the fact that we're just coming out of a pandemic and resources are getting a bit interesting around the world because things aren't moving how we expected them to be. That resources, that abundance has been there. That's in the past. And right now it's Perroth. This is one of my favorite runes. Classically, it means chessmen or chance, because it's a thing that warriors do in the long haul after battle. I don't know many young men who want to play chess after they've done something fun and exciting all day and been drinking. Perroth also translates to pussy, as in sex. So it's a very central rune about reproduction and that growth of an idea, that very primal need to connect with another human being, to build that energy up, and connecting like sex. And so this is the energy that's drawing from this maybe fear space of Theu that's come in the past, of lack of resources, of uncertainty about where resources are coming from, into this. Let's reconnect now. Let's see where we can build connections and use our luck to build those connections. And seizing that luck, like I said earlier, if you don't seize the opportunities that the universe presents you, yeah, they'll come along again, but you've lost 6 months, you've lost a year. So if the opportunity to connect in some way comes, then this is the way, this is the action to take in the now. So in the next like few hours maybe. And moving forward over the next short period of time towards maybe the end of the week, the next 2 or 3 days, we've got the rune Winyo. Winyo is also one of my favorite runes. I've got lots of favorite runes. Winyo is the rune of bliss. If you know you're sitting on by the windowsill, you've got a warm blanket on, and you've got your favorite drink, and you've got a book, and everything is just right. You've got a snack maybe, and the cat sitting on your lap. It's that feeling of just, ah. So this is what's going to come if you can seize the opportunity of connection around the idea of resources, that's going to bring you forward into your bliss, into your life purpose, because you'll know that feeling, and it's literally like you've shed the rucksack off your back. You can stand a bit straighter, your shoulders can go back, your lungs can open, and you can breathe clear, fresh air, because you have seized that opportunity. You've taken action to connect with someone in any which way you want to connect with that person, essentially, and with the aspect of looking at where the resources are and where the resources come from. So you build the story from this resources, this abundance. Maybe you've got resources or you need resources, through the connection, through the sexual attraction or the luck, to build that connection into your bliss that will be your life purpose, that will be and show you the way in what really, really makes you light up, like connect to your light within yourself.
Oh my God, I love it. Thank you so much for giving us a collective reading. And of course, for everybody listening, whenever you listen or watch this interview, that's a valid reading for you. So take it as it is.
Every time.
And I love how much depth we can get from just a single symbol when we take the time to study, to understand the concept, and at the same time feed off of the energy, the collective energy of all the people who have been using that. I feel that they're like powerful symbols that we can access. Like, I don't know, they hold so much energetic information that as soon as we start connecting with the runes, it just becomes us and it comes forth, right?
And that's one of the fun things about runes, is that because they have been relatively unchanged for 1500 years, they still have this really powerful resonance. You could probably do the same thing with the modern alphabet, but there's so much other stuff around it. But these runes haven't been touched very much. And so with this deep trench of thematic energy that flows through them is there in ways that we can dive straight into this really deep well of knowledge and energetic patterning. And what's great about them is that everyone can have a slightly different interpretation that's equally valid, because it's a felt experience, not a prescribed one that A is for apple, B is for bunny. No, Theu is wealth, abundance. What does that concept mean to you? You may not value dollars, you may value hugs, and it's all those sort of things that bring energy to you in your way, for your interpretation, uniquely, powerfully yours.
Wow, powerful. I love how layered they are. Rich, thank you so much for sharing with us so much information about the runes. I loved learning more about it, and I'm sure everybody did as well. And people, you can let us know in the comments if you enjoyed this. If you have any questions for Rich, make sure to post them in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you are watching this in a podcast episode, then make sure to come within your Spiritual Toolkit Facebook group and ask your question there. Rich, can you please tell people where they can connect with you and where they can get the book from?
The book is out at the beginning of November, so a couple of months from the time of recording. anywhere you get books from. You can find out, there's a pre-order thing on my website, richardlister.com, where you can get a Under the Cloak meditation, which is an ancient form of meditation that the Vikings practice, and a bind rune for abundance. Again, richardlister.com is where you can find me. I'm on social media where I do a rune reading every day at richlisteruk. I haven't worked out TikTok yet, so it's only on Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, you can find me there, and I love doing this. So please don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you ask me into George's group, I can definitely help you as well.
Yes, perfect. Richard, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and sharing with us.
My absolute pleasure. It's an honor. Thank you.